All right, real quick. So, even though I said the next video was going to be super detailed and stuff like that, and I was going to record a bunch of videos, change of plans. You know how I was speaking about how hot it is and everything? Found out it's because our air conditioner, our AC, is broken in this. So, like, the floor is all slippery because of moisture collection and all that, and there's like worries about this, that, and the other thing. But the big thing is, I tried to record a video, and my phone would overheat. So I'm just gonna be recording like short little videos. So this one, I didn't really think too far ahead before I turned it on, but I was like, I'll speak about something I can speak about, which is the types and classes for the book series that I'm making. And I'll do more videos on like characters and stuff like that, like Icklum or Lear or things like that later. And this one's just like, I'll have more detailed on types and classes. I'm not sure I'm going to be saying types. I might change it from types, but I'll get you the general idea real quick. Like, this is just a generalization. Of course, we'll do more specific and more like one types and classes, but real quick, okay. You got 4 types. You got unique, secondary, magic, and all-rounder. Unique, their weapon is their main focus. Their weapon contains the infinite amount of energy, always putting out, and they don't actually have anything except for the fact that their weapon can't affect them. And so, for example, like I use S-class or bladed weapons for them most of the time. So like a oil blade that whatever it cuts, or an ink blade, whatever it cuts slowly spreads and changes it into ink. Sort of like ink in water, ink on paper spreading out, but that's their body changing. And like, they're usually called world destroyers because like the dude would take a blade and he could like stab it into the world, and the world would slowly but surely become ink, right? The way to usually deal with it is like, you get a cut in your hand, start spreading, cut your arm off before it happens, right? Before it spreads. But that's usually the way to deal with it, and pretty much that's unique types. They're the most powerful and also the most unique and rare. Secondaries, they absorb energy from around them into either their weapon or their body, and then they release it either more powerful or in a different way. But like, they absorb energy and then they release it, right? They don't just like contain it. Sometimes they contain it and then like it multiplies, becomes more powerful or more concentrated or just more quantity, or more quality. But yeah, that's like how secondaries work. It's either their body or their weapons that do that. It really depends on the person, but I'll get more into that another video. Magic types, they're the ones that are the perfect creation that the scientist was trying to create. Like basically their bodies do what a unique weapon does. It produces energy infinitely, and what their weapons do is their weapons either magnify, multiply, amplify, add, increase, grow, concoct, create, and all these other words. I'd get more into it, but basically their weapons just help their control over the energy, so they don't actually need the weapons. Like, it could amplify this attack, but it would only be a fire class attack, where without it, they could do this, that, and the other thing like that. And the way magic types work is basically think any magic genre. Like, they could do inscriptions, they can do spells with spell words, they can do hand signals. It all depends on, how they decide to interpret how their ability works. But all of them can go to magic school, and that's sort of how it is magic school, where they learn based off this certain school of thought. And each one, usually their weapon is like specified to one certain type. Like fire, my usual attack with fire is this, but when I use this, it's more powerful, or I have to use less energy, or it's easier to control, or things like that, right? Like a remote or a magnifying glass sort of idea, where like, hey, with a remote, I can do this and I can do all these, but if I go up, I can still do it just pressing the buttons on a TV. It's just more hard work and a lot more complicated and a lot more steps. And with the magnifying glass, you can see this, and like if you get close, you can see it, but with this, you can see it a lot easier, or you can magnify the sun rays and hurt things, like example like that, right? And then all-rounders is a little bit of all three, or they can have specifically, they level up their weapons or their bodies, and they can reach certain specific levels where it's just unique to that special individual, right? But all-rounders are usually just a little bit of all three, sometimes merged in together, sort of like, think like if you're mixing yellow, red, and blue. Well, some you'll you'll get maybe this color or that color depending on how much more of red, how much more of yellow, how much more blue you mix in. Or you could do it a swirl where you see the yellow, blue, and red. Or you can do, you know, lines where you see yellow, blue, and red. It's yellow, blue, and red, but it's not mixed together. So like things like that. All-rounders are very versatile, but they need to do specific actions to get it. That's why a lot of them are usually weak and they're the slave races, because they don't have a lot of time to get to their unique, special, specific person. Like sometimes you might just have to do 500 swings with your weapon for you, but the next person has to do 505, or they could swing their weapon for their whole life and it would never work because they had to just like talk to their weapon 2 times a day for a week. So it really just depends on that, and that's how I like to write the story. And then classes, you got you got S, R, G, F, S, R, G, F, X, and C. C is a magic class, or C is magic type. If you're a magic type, then you have a C class. Okay, there's that. Oh, and you got fusions with the types, but it's sort of the same way I described all-rounders, where you could have a little bit of this and a little bit of that, or you can mix it into a complete different thing. It could be really strong, it could be really weak. You could have both the strengths of a type with none of the weaknesses, or both weaknesses and none of the strengths, or a mix where it's completely different from everything else. And that's the same with classes. You can have a little bit of the strengths of a class and a little bit of weakness, or both weaknesses, none strengths, or both strengths or none weaknesses, or you can mix them all together. It wouldn't matter. But yeah, C is just magic types. Like C class, if you're a magic type, you're a C class. If you're a C class, you're a magic type. Right? S is any bladed weapons, like sharp weapons, like swords, katanas, knives, axes. Right? R are any ranged weapons, like guns, or like, you know, think like guns, or if it was a shuriken, it would be an SR. That's sort of what you'll see a lot in classes, is like this and this, is because it sort of falls in the range of both. For example, a grenade would be a rare example where it wouldn't be an R, even though you throw it. It would just be a G, which G are explosives, but if you put it into a grenade launcher, then it would be a GR or RG, right? But R is ranged weapons, like guns, usually guns, but like, you know, maybe a boomerang that isn't sharp for some reason, well, obviously, but you know, a boomerang, or maybe just a rock, or a rubber band, or a slingshot, or things like that, right? Or a cannonball. A cannonball would be a really good example. Or like one of those, you know what I'm talking about. They used them back in the day where they put huge rocks and then they cut the end and sling over. It's a catapult. Catapult would be a great example too of an R, you know, ranged weapons. Right, and I'll speak about the different classes and their abilities real quick. Like S are really fast, very beautiful. They're based off how like vampires look, so they're very pale white, tall, beautiful, fast. Sort of strong, but not very. R is sort of like average height is like 5'2" to maybe 5'8", but usually like 5'4" to 5'6". That's average. Oh, and S is like usually 6'5" to 7'2", 7'3". But R has really good senses. Usually one of their senses is higher than the others, but their senses in general are really good. Like they can see very well, hear very well, taste very well, smell very well, feel very well, hear very well, things like that. But they don't have the best strength or the best speed. And they can be pretty much any color, hair color, skin tone. Usually S have black or silver or blonde hair, sometimes red, but usually it's black, silver, or blonde. Sometimes white, or white, silver, you know, and gray, but they're all pale white skin, and they're very beautiful. Like I said, G is, like I said, explosives, like grenades, pretty much, like grenades, sticky bombs, bombs in general, things that go explode. Fireworks could be an example, as well. Though if it was like a rocket, it would be an SR, not an SR, a RG. But their class people, their clan of people is really tall, huge, mostly male, sometimes female. They got bronze skin. They usually have scars all over. They're really, 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 really hard to kill. They're super durable. Like you could shoot one in the head multiple times and they'll still survive. You'll have to pretty much blow off their head for them to die. And they can range anywhere from like 9 to 25 feet tall. They're basically based off giants. They're pretty much tanks. And then let's see, we got F. F is their weapons basically are protective, so they can be anywhere from like a piece of clothing, like a glove, to a giant fortress or a galaxy. Depending, if it was a galaxy, it would be like a unique weapon basically. Their height usually ranges from like 5'6" to sometimes 5'10", like usually around that range. They're any skin color again, and their skills, they're great at surviving. Like they're survivalists. They can live without food for a long time, live without air for a long time, water for a long time, and of course with any of these skills like speed, for example with S class, as long as you practice it more, you'll get better at it. But also if you practice with your weapon more, you'll get better at your weapon. So there's always that balancing where maybe the fastest person isn't the best fighter, right? So like with F, if you just hold your breath longer, then maybe you can't hold it that long for the first time, but then, like in real life, the more you practice at it, the better you get. So, they're just really good survivalists, but that doesn't mean they can survive physical injuries well. It's just like, without food or around high temperatures, around cold temperatures, or in a vacuum, they can survive very well. And then we got X, which are basically based off, X weapons upgrade things, right? Their big ability is that they can, with inanimate objects, they can understand sort of things that happen to it, like maybe talk with it or have an understanding with it, like see what happened to it blank amount of years ago. So they're really good, like detectives. Some of them, or a lot of them, become detectives because they can tell that, and it's usually one specific thing to that one specific character. But they are usually like 3'5" to possibly 5 foot. It really, like, they're big range in height, but usually most of them are males that are sort of, I'll be honest, based off gnomes or the blacksmith's characters, dwarves. Yeah, so usually they're based off gnomes or dwarves, but the females can be based off others, like vampires sometimes, but not usually. Maybe succubus sometimes, but not usually. Most of the time they're norms or dwarves, and they're usually guys for X type, right? Or for X class. And then C class is basically based off wizards. They can be any height, but they usually range from 5'6" to sometimes 6 foot. They can be female or male, and depending on what school they're learning in will depend on what type of attire they wear. But usually, I think wizards or witch or scholars or scientists is usually like the way they look. It really depends, and usually like C class, you'll either have them in like basically the wizard class or the scholar class, or not scholar, or the science class, like sort of idea of how they attack the idea with how to use the energy in their body and modify it and change it to do certain spells or ideas and forms. And their weapons are very, very wide range, but it's usually like, wands or bottles for potions or vials for like science mixing, or sometimes it could be glasses to affect certain spells that they're disposition to, or like gloves to help, spell casting, even though like gloves could also fall into the F category. It would depend. It could also be things like a pill. Like literally it's just a pill. Once they eat it, it's gone, but it helps them use a certain type of spell, or a certain type of elemental spell, or like it can be really vague, like fire or heat or cold, to really specific like houses, like house magic. House magic, and like pills, like literally it's just a one time, and then it affects their body permanently, where they're able to do this forever. And the way the weapons will discover you is basically everyone's sort of, if you're born from two people, you sort of look like how they look like in real life. But then if you're affected by your weapon, you'll be like, how does that affect with the class? Well, once you discover your weapon, you somehow find your weapon, the weapon calls you, and you have to do a test. It really just depends on the weapon, how I want to write the story, really. How I want to write the story of how one person have found their weapon. But usually the most general idea is like, it's sort of just, you fall upon it, you discover it, you're walking one day and you say, ooh, shiny, a sword. pick it up, and like it discovers you, and then you guys synchronize basically, and it will change your body. Now, if you go out and try to find a weapon, and then like maybe there's this one real popular weapon, oh, this is a unique weapon, and then you touch it and it doesn't like you, you die. So usually that's why it's better, like if you're just happen upon it and you touch it, then yeah, it like looked for you and then you discovered it. But like if you're looking and like people know, oh, this weapon is right here, this person died and this weapon is right here, and then you go over and you try to get it and you die just because it didn't like you. But if you go over and pick it up, hey, happenstance, good luck, good job, man. And that's sort of like the whole idea of how the types and classes work. Of course, like I said, there's more concrete stuff I could do, but I'm really trying to speak fast and concise and get all the thoughts, sort of the general idea, because my phone might overheat at any moment.